So I thought it would be more of a kind of open discussion on, because I find myself not a developer yet, and I often look at different programming languages and kind of get to a point where I believe that I kind of know kind of the construct, and I'm kind of ready to build, and I come up with a small project, and then that project forces me to either learn a framework or kind of have a more in-depth knowledge about the process of learning. So I just thought if you want to join vocally or both video and audio, it'd be great to have just a kind of the topic and around that topic. And for the more senior, kind of if you could kind of give advice around that kind of process in terms of being able to just think about the detail that you need to think of in terms of what do you do for hosting, how do you join for how do you kind of choose the framework if the language has multiple frameworks to do the same thing, and when it's kind of time to reach out and ask for help, basically. Hi, Esco.
So let's see. Well, okay, one question that how to choose the framework when there are multiple options. So I think maybe I usually try to search that which one is the most popular at the moment, and based on go based on that, and then after I have some experience with it, then maybe in the next project I will choose to use the same one or try something different. So not to sweat too much over it.
Yeah. I also tend to have things like when you approach a new framework, whether it's in, let's say, JavaScript or Java, there's a lot of conversation around understanding how the framework was kind of put together. And I think for a junior, it's kind of super hard to just be comfortable with like things like design patterns and understanding. Okay, maybe you kind of understand high level what MVC is, but when it goes down to understanding what like dependency injection pattern looks like and feels like, and why is it even implemented there, it's kind of hard sometimes to just abstract that away and just go and just do whatever you have to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. I think also when I started, I didn't yet learn how to learn effectively. But okay, nowadays it's much easier that I know that okay, these are the things. This is the thing I want to do. Then let me find out that only this part of the only the minimum set of features and other things that I need to use to get to my goal. So especially with some of the very big frameworks, it might take days to read through all of it, that all the features and how to use them. So it's better to try to keep some focus. That okay, what can I do that maybe read 1 or 2 hours, that how does this thing work, and then try using it, and then if there are problems, then learn some more.
Actually, talking about that, I have a question for you, because you did the Clojure kind of coding session this morning. So if someone wants to go and say, okay, I want to learn functional programming, Clojure might be a good kind of starting point, or maybe not. But then you'll only use Clojure for learning purposes. But then if you have to learn, like use Clojure on the job, and you have no idea what type of application this programming languages has been kind of built, or is just more suited for, what would you say about Clojure specifically in terms of where do you see that being used out there?
Yeah, I find it has a very good fit in making back-end web applications and handling data, because it has good facilities for well, all the data is immutable, so you don't need to think about does this object change when I'm having a hold of it. And it has also good tools for transforming this data. And like 90% of the programs I've worked with have been that there's some data comes from the user, then we process it somehow and put it to the database, and then we read it again from the database and render it to the UI. So that's most of this is just data coming in and data going out. So Closure has a good fit for that kind of stuff. And maybe
Sure.
And maybe one negative side is that starting up a Closure program takes easily like 10 or 20 seconds. It does quite much initialization when it starts up, so it's not good for programs that need to run in a few seconds. But if you once you start it, then it's fast.
I don't know if anyone has a question. I was also thinking, how do you go about choosing, or maybe ordering your decision making in terms of the technology that you have to use? For example, if you already know that you want to build a project in a specific language, that's one. And then you have to choose a framework, that's two. And then you have to think about the type of database that you want to be having if you need a database for this project. And then and maybe later thinking about your kind of like hosting kind of tool, if you have to do cloud servicing, or you have to use something like AWS or Heroku or things like that. What would be your kind of like process there, I guess?
Well, maybe things to consider is that how popular is it? If there are many users, then it's likely you can find answers to your questions just by Googling them. And also that how mature is it, that if it has been around for many years, then likely it's more likely that they have solved many of the little problems that it has. And then just okay, then also that what are your needs, that how it fits those.
James, coming along, and yeah, that'd be good to hear about architecture decisions.
Yeah, sure. So at least in a team setting, I haven't actually done these for anything individual, but in a team setting, there's a practice that I'm going to get the organization wrong. But someone presented at the Lead Dev conference in New York a few years ago about, I think it was a Netflix practice, where for any big picture architectural decision, like choosing a framework, like choosing a database, that kind of thing, if you need to make a choice about it, you write what's called an architecture decision record. Architecture decision records have a common form. They have a status of the proposal. So in the one I put in the link, it's accepted because we accepted it. They have a context, which should explain why you need to make a decision about this. And the context will also explain some of the options that you're choosing. They end with a decision, which is like which of the options that you're considering you're actually going to choose. And they explain the consequences. So these are documentation for the rest of the team for like why you're making the decision that you're making. They're also documentation for people who aren't yet on the team, who might come in and be like, well, why is this another PostgreSQL app? This could have been Elasticsearch. This could have been just a Redis app, because Redis is cool and exciting again. And, you explain like the options that you considered. It's like maybe you didn't even consider that option. And so they don't have to wonder like, or they don't have to like retread the same ground over and over of how was this technical choice made. It's all written down for everyone to find out. we've been using them on a number of projects. We learned that a company we work with also adopted them after seeing some of them in an open source thing that they have like an alternative for. There's also, I should mention, a really useful tool called really useful repo called ADR Tools. That give you a nice CLI for managing them. If you're bad at remembering whether it was context or current status or whatever. I don't actually remember the subject headings anymore. I just say ADR new. They are our go-to answer to the question of how do you choose tools and how do you choose between tools.
Or at least, so ADRs are good for documenting how did you choose a tool. So I don't know. Maybe the question how to choose. Maybe would it help that read the ADRs of some other people and see what things they have considered.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's harder when also if you're more junior and you haven't used specific tools, you just know that you probably after some research you know that you have to use those tools, but you have never used them, so that kind of like slows you down a little bit in your kind of like project progression, which can be a bit scary. At least for me, I know sometimes I feel like I'm like sidetracking and not really focusing on what I have to focus on, even though what I'm kind of reading or learning about is kind of important or useful for the project that I'm working on overall. So I think, when I stopped project halfway through, or if I gave up on some of the projects sometimes, it's just because I was just like, okay, I don't even know. I don't even know how many tools I need to kind of understand high level and kind of know a little bit more than high level before I can actually have this project done. So is it a matter of having projects that are too big, or just because there are so many things to know in order to get your project out there that it's kind of normal to go through this?
Let me know if I'm not answering your question quite right, but I think it can help narrow the scope is if you can write the context section of an ADR, then you know what question you're trying to answer for that tool choice. And maybe there are other choices that you have to make as well. But if you can describe the context that you're trying to make the choice in, it gets a lot easier to like narrow the space of tools that you need to consider.
Okay.
Like you don't have to choose like your database and your front end framework and your back end framework all at the same time. So if you like make specific focused considerations of each of those, that can be helpful.
Sure.
Jumping
Krista, hi.
I was going to say something similar, that if you feel like you are researching or trying to figure out too many things at once, then kind of making the scope smaller can help. So focus on one aspect. If you're building an app and start with maybe the user interface, like write some HTML and CSS, make it look like you want, and figure out like that part first, and then or maybe just like one aspect, like build a form in just HTML CSS, figure out, make it look like the way you want it, and then next step would be, okay, like I need to somehow get this data, like figure out like how you're gonna kind of collect the data, and then the next step is to kind of write it to a database. So okay, like what kind of, so yeah, just focus on one thing. Like you don't have to kind of figure out the whole, especially when you're starting out and you're a junior, and like there are so many tools obviously you need to come to grips with, but just focus on one aspect at a time. Obviously, if you're kind of more experienced and you have a team and you're starting a new project, and as a team you're figuring out like what tools you're going to use, you're probably going to do these kinds of decisions at the beginning, and you decide not everything but most of these decisions, but you have the support of other people to think through these. But when you're doing it on your own and you're a junior and you don't really know what even like your options out there, I would say like just focusing on one aspect at a time and not on the whole thing all at the same time can help to kind of like figure out like very, you know, these kind of like distinct part, and you don't feel overwhelmed like, oh, I'm researching like CSS frameworks, but at the same time I'm looking at like 3 different databases. Like, no, that can be extremely overwhelming. Like, focus on one aspect at a time. It would be my suggestion. I don't know if anyone agrees with that. Yeah, and obviously the dynamic is extremely different if you're on a team, you're experienced or you have more experienced people. I mean, a lot of the times when I do these kinds of things, a thing that we decide is what are the capabilities of the team at large, right? Like if we know like on the team we know these tools, we're probably gonna choose a tool that we're not gonna choose something that is wildly different than from what everyone else knows, right? Like it becomes kind of more of a question of what is appropriate for the job and what is a thing that we can get started quite easily, right? It becomes kind of a, but when you're junior and everything is unfamiliar, then it's just, you have to gotta start somewhere. So I would say go small and go focused as opposed to like big and trying to figure out everything.
So I guess the approach, the reason why I'm saying this is because like I started with Python, right? And then at some point you move into a framework, and at the time it was Flask, and then you go, okay, so I have this language, I have this framework. Oh wait, I need to kind of have a UI view for whatever project I want to be doing, right? And that's where the block is, because you have to stop and be like, okay, I kind of have to know some little HTML, some little CSS, some JavaScript as well. So that kind of start piling up before you even decided whether or not you have to actually have a database for your project, or have, and then once you have all of this stuff, you go, okay, that works well on the machine, but what if I need to put this project out there for people to see it, so that, you know, I can put that on my CV? And now you have to think about hosting and all these things are quite overwhelming. So, I mean, for me, that's always the blocker, is like every time you need to do something, you have to switch into a new technology or switch the mindset, right? So,
I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Maybe it's there's so many decisions to make, and most of them don't matter as long as you just choose something. So maybe if you have some more experienced developers, you can ask that, okay, I need to choose something for this. Okay, what do you recommend? And preferably something that they have already used in the past, instead of something new and shiny.
Yeah.
And also maybe think about that. Okay, is there some way that I can do this with the things that I already know? For example, if I don't know how to use a database, okay, can I do this without a database?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like even a spreadsheet can be a database. So, you know, if you're like, oh, I'm very good with like Google Sheets, like there are ways to write data to a Google Sheet and query it later. So you don't necessarily need like Postgres and a client for that to do it. So, but I mean, I think you have to remember that like these things are hard. So I know how overwhelming it can feel, and you just have to like remind yourself these things are hard. I would say like one of the things, if you're on your own, and it's one of the reasons why we started codebar, is like a lot of the times like you will have to ask someone for some guidance, like like, for example, codebar is a really no worries, is where you would it's where you would come to do that. Like codebar is the perfect place if you have a question like that, but like, hey, I built this UI, you know, here's a form. I made it look like relatively okay. I learned some HTML. I wrote some CSS from scratch, or I researched and chose a CSS framework, and I now need to kind of like get the data out of this form and put it somewhere. Like that is the perfect kind of question to go to codebar with, and like someone can, based on that, suggest. But yeah, a lot of times, or like if you find any sort of like online, like there are, you know, groups who get together and code together, like that's also a really good place to, I don't know, like free code camp groups, for example, where you can learn from, ask questions from other people. But yeah, like you just basically at one point you'll probably have to ask some questions from some more experienced people. And but yeah, I would say, yeah, focus on one thing at a time. Don't get overwhelmed. These things are hard, especially when you're learning them and you have no idea where to even look for answers. And yeah, and try to find a place where you can basically ask these questions.
Has anyone
Sure.
ever read the piece on picking boring technology? It's fantastic. Like when you are looking to pick things that you should use and how to innovate responsibly. Like I forget who it was that wrote it. I really do. I know the blog post is called "Use Boring Technology." There we go. Like,
okay. Oh, there you go.
I presume that link is the right link. And the idea is that you have like a number of innovation tokens when you are choosing what tools to use, and the things that you should always use are the things that you know how to use. I know that sounds like really, really, really obvious, but the right answer is always the stuff you know how to do, right? And if you want to choose like some experimental new programming language or database, or I don't even know what, like platform, you spend an innovation token, and you have like 3 of them in total. And the only time you ever get them back is when you take something new and innovative and make it boring and stable, right? And then you can take another risk on something new. But like the answer is always use the stuff you know. Right? Use the stuff you know until it doesn't work for you, and spend your innovation tokens gently. I'm not saying don't innovate, but make sure that you're not innovating all the time. Like focus on your idea rather than the technology choices, because the simple truth is that most technology can, like, literally, I mean, most people in technology are building websites. You can build websites in like every programming language environment, and they're all basically the same. I know everyone hates to hear it, but they all basically are the same, and they're good enough. Like, pick the thing that you know the best and you're most comfortable with.
Sure. Pavel, maybe you had something to share?
Yeah, I kind of jumped in this session in the middle, so I might be saying things that people already said. But my journey was that it's something that I experienced in my journey is it really resonates what you said, because for a long time, and there was many times in my life that this kind of happened to me again, when I changed project, especially a long time, it feels like crazy. Like you join a project and you don't know any technology, you don't even know where to start, because you're like, oh, I need to know this, and then like, oh, I bet I need to know that, and that I need to know this, but I need to know that. It's like you move in a circle, and it's like, where do I start? Anything that I need is like I don't know anything. And sometimes it's just like you just kind of, what I learned is like I just chip away in random places, and as I chip away, after a few weeks or months, things somehow suddenly start making sense. But for me, and that's my personal journey, it's been an experience of like, it's really frustrating, because for a long time you're just chipping away and you're like, nothing is making sense. And you just kind of have to have a lot of persistence and belief that things will start to make sense. And from my experience, they do. From my experience, they do. Like you start chipping away, suddenly you're like, oh, wait. Oh, actually, I chip away a little here, a little here, a little here. A little... Oh, this is actually starting to make sense. This is the most wonderful place to be in. And I'm sure you've been through that, because you already know Python and Flask. So you must, or like, I would encourage you to remember how it felt when you first started. And I'm sure it was a similar feeling, but like, where do I even start? I don't even know where to start. Everything is unknown. And I know that in my experience, like when I was at like 5 or 7 years of experience mark, I joined a new project which was totally different. And I had that again. And that was super annoying because like, I've been doing that for a long time. How the hell do I still have to face this? It's unfair. And then, and it's also embarrassing because you're experienced and you're supposed to know these things. Yeah, but it was, I think to me, it was like this lesson of like this chipping away and just like, so it resonates with me. It can be really frustrating. And sometimes you just have to like believe or trust that, you know what, like if you stay with the problem long enough, things eventually start making sense. And the more you do it with another technology, you actually see that these things, it's like a pattern that keeps happening to you, because other things that nobody tells you about, you can be in technology for 15 years and you get a new technology and you're the dumb one in the room again. So that's a bit for me of my personal journey. That's all I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think it's just, at first it's really frustrating because you just learn one thing and you think, okay, I know this thing, in this case, I think I know this language quite well, but you have not done anything specific with it. You just learn the construct, and and you can solve some, like, I don't know, base level coding questions, but you have not delved into, okay, how do, like, decision making around frameworks, or thinking about how the framework is built so that you can use it better, right? And then once you've done that, how do you move into decision whether or not you can just make your application work just everything in memory, or do you need kind of a database or anything to kind of store data? And then once you've done with it, and then you go, okay, I have the whole entire front end to do. So that's another language, and then 2 other markup languages. Like, it's kind of it's overwhelming because there's too many things to kind of know, even base level, right? So, and then you never get the satisfaction of being like, oh, at least I know this.
It is, and I encourage you to speak to people. Like, if you can speak to more people, in like, some people will tell you, no, I've never experienced that. That's a lie. I mean, if you speak to people and they tell you honestly, every single person in this room, every single programmer ever went through the same journey. Everyone was as frustrated as you, and maybe that helps to like know that, kind of we all share this this journey. And if somebody tells you, no, I was smart and I didn't, they're just liars. They I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
I think that's what kept me definitely from just finishing project, even the smallest, and then that's kind of a frustration for me now, but also kind of a fear on of being able to get into this next level where you're just like, hey, okay, I know how to solve a algorithmic question. I even know some data structure very well, and kind of know how to use them in the context of an interview process. But I have nothing to get me to the interview process because I haven't had the patience enough to chip away, like you said, and kind of like learn every single bit of technology that I needed to have kind of an MVP type thing.
I just came here to suggest the same thing as Pavel, is that I think finding some sort of like group that can kind of keep you accountable for, if you say, okay, I know now some technologies, I need to actually build something that I can demonstrate that I know this thing. And honestly, like, this could be a thing that's been done, a proven thing that you don't have to, it can be a to-do app, and I know, like, we've all built a gajillion to-do apps, but it's fine, like, as long as you've built the code or like you've wrote the code, and it's not like just wholesale someone else is doing that. It's fine to build something that's already a proven concept, and there's like a lot of literature out there on the web. But yeah, so like, I kind of just choose a project. It can be something that's been done many times before. It doesn't have to be original, and find a group of people that can like help, that you can talk to about it and can like hold you accountable for progress on it. Somewhere where if you're running into any like technical questions or issues or decisions, you can like talk through it, because sometimes like it's really hard to do this on your own, and like having to make all these decisions on your own without like input from, I find that really hard. So yeah, so any kind of like coding club. But yeah, and I think I was just say like start small, and you can probably like if you know like I want to like write something in this technology and I need to start small, like you can probably like remix someone else's project. So like take something that's already existing, like look how they've done it, look how how the system works together, and like try to replicate it yourself. Like don't copy and paste, but it is okay to refer to something that's already out there and existing and then try to replicate. So for example, there's like this website called Glitch. I don't know if you know it, and like people put up like sample projects and you can literally like clone it and kind of like add on to it or make it your own. And I think when you're just trying to figure out like how the things work, or like how all these different tools come together, it's totally fine to do that. So maybe do one of those projects where you take someone else's, you remix it a little, you make it your own, and then now you have a better understanding of like how, like, I don't know, how to like hook something up to a database or something. And then maybe like then the next step be like, okay, now I'm gonna write something from scratch as much as you write things in tech from scratch. Like nothing is ever from scratch, right? Like everything is based on other people's code. Like you look up things online all the time. It's all like nothing is like original basically. But yeah, and I think like just finding some sort of group of people that you can like rely on is like super important. It's so hard to do this on your own. So I would say, yeah, like it's okay to kind of like look at existing things, like base your thing on existing things out there. Finding a group and like starting small is where you're gonna, I think, be able to like like step across this hurdle and like make it to the next level where you can say like, oh, I can kind of like now start a project from scratch and like build it, like get some data in, get some data out, put it on the internet for everyone to use, like hosting. So yeah, I think those three things would be my suggestion. Just wanted to jump and say that. Sorry, we went a little too long. I'm gonna leave now.
Yeah, it just came. Yeah, it just came to our mind that how complicated all these technologies are nowadays. That 20 years ago we had HTML and PHP and MySQL database, and that was like pretty much everything you had to know. Okay, then came CSS, and then came all the web frameworks, and now you need a dozen tools even to make a front end. So maybe going back in time and if you already know some things, then okay, try to think that what can you do with those things that you know, and only as the last resort, then add new things to your toolbox. But okay, I think the first time I came overwhelmed was when I joined a company and had to learn tons of different new technologies. So that was like easily close to a month just learning about new things.
Do you think your learning was easier because you were at the company, so you had kind of a code base to look at and kind of get familiar with as well?
Yeah, I think that too also helps, and that when you join an existing project, then there's also like a place for everything, and then you just need to make some additions.
If I can add something, Mike, is that okay?
Go ahead.
Sorry, another one that came. It's a Krishna. So that was like amazing. So like there are a lot of things really resonated. That was really good stuff. And this reminded me that I think that part of, so for example, for me that was really good when I was starting is I just didn't have any clue, but I was like really confident, and I was like one of those like cocky people that just like confidently applied things wrong. And I remember in my university, like I was always the person in the project kind of led people. It's like kind of like lemmings falling off the cliff, because everybody would trust me. Because like I would just like say, oh, we should do this. It's just very it was wrong because I had no clue what we were doing. And that helped me a bit. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I just kind of like, I'm reflecting on this. And I was like, yeah, when we were in university and we learned programming, kind of what you said, and we were supposed to do a project, and nobody knew what the hell we were doing. And then I know like on a project, I usually just like chose an architecture, we just did it. And then now that I remember it, it was terrible. Like my choices and my decisions, sometimes sleepless nights, me kind of saying, no, we should do it this way. It was totally wrong. But somehow led us somewhere. So I don't know if I'm suggesting to be confident, confident but wrong. But it certainly sometimes helps a bit, because I think sometimes the paralysis is caused by the fact, like, being afraid that you fail. And it's terrible. But what Krishna said also resonated a lot. When it was a group of people and we all had no idea, it really helped to me. I don't know, maybe it's, but it really helped to me to know that, like, other people also have no clue what they're doing, and we're kind of learning together. And sometimes, like Jay, just kind of being confident about direction and just doing something was better than anything else.
Yeah, I think that one helps a lot, because I feel like I might be probably good theoretically, but then application is really hard at the moment.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me. By the way, I kind of noticed that we're kind of speaking at you, but I think there's more people on this call who are in a similar position. So I think when we're talking about this, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people kind of resonating with this journey.
Yeah, I hope so. And yeah, I'd like to hear
I'm
from
sure,
other
yeah.
people. Yeah. Fabrice, thanks for your intervention on the chat. I think that's, like, being scared to fail is definitely one of my downfall kind of thing. I have no idea what time this one finish and how long it's supposed to be.
8 minutes until 7:10. Yeah. Yeah. Just to jump in, I'm looking at the schedule. I don't know. I had something that I was gonna add and I forgot. I'm sorry. Oh boy.
I just want to say I don't think you should worry too much about abandoned projects. I don't know if that's something you're worried about, but I'm just looking through my own GitHub right now, and discovering that I had some real plans at one point for some of these repos, but they're going nowhere. And I am scared to open them and look at what I wrote 5 years ago. But
no.
Fortunately, no one's going to make me do. I'll never know what's inside.
When I started coding, which wasn't that long ago, it was about like 7 years ago. I signed up for GitHub, like we all do, to somewhere to host my code and somewhere to put my code. And back then you couldn't really have, like, you had to pay for private repos. So everything I did was open, and I had like something like just recently, I don't know, like with kind of work stuff as well, but somewhere like 50 repos, and most of it was just like random, like started unfinished thing. And recently GitHub made private repos free, so I went through and literally made all of my kind of like random like junk repos private, like, okay, people don't need to see this. So like we all have so many skeletons in our drawers. Like don't worry about starting something and not finishing, because we all do it. Like, yeah, just I think like if you do it a little bit and you learn one thing off of it, like it was already worth starting, right? And you just make it private, leave it there, and like it's totally fine. To not finish something, we all do all the time. Like nothing is ever finished in tech, right? There isn't a thing as a finished project. Even though if you think like, okay, this is functional enough and it works as intended, like you leave it for a month, you come back and like half of it is broken anyways. Like the server is not running and like what the hell happened? I don't know. Didn't even touch it, and for some reason it's just not. So like as long as you study something and you learn one thing, like I think that's like you've already got your worth out of whatever you did. So things don't have to be finished, and things are never finished. Things are not finished. So it's all in flux. Things that change all the time. So I think like the biggest thing like in tech you have to come to terms with is like knowing that you don't know things.
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
being comfortable with like, which is for example super hard for me. It's like I was just in Joe's talk before this, and like I struggle with all of those things. Like I'm a mild perfectionist. I have pretty bad like imposter syndrome sometimes. It comes in like ebbs and flows. Like sometimes I like have a confident few weeks, or like I'm like, yeah, I'm on top of this, I can do this, and then like something happens and I just like hit. But yeah, like it's just be comfortable knowing that you don't know things and that things are gonna be a struggle, but you have to trust that it will click, right? Like just do it again and again and again until it kind of like makes sense. It's basically like how I learned to learn, like not be discouraged by a failure of like, oh, I don't quite understand this. Like do it again, like try to do it a little bit differently. Like find some sort of different literature, like some blog post that approaches the issue from a different angle. Like maybe like you learn better that way, like that explanation will just somehow click for you personally. And yeah, I guess like just keep doing things and don't worry about it. Abandon stuff. Like I wouldn't worry about it. It's not an issue. Like again, everyone has like lots and lots of like dead little projects in their GitHub graveyard. So it's totally fine.
Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, I'll take that away, and I hope it helped kind of more people than just myself. And I hope all the people that are hiding are also
Yeah,
listening.
hopefully.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, I think just basically like remember to be kind to yourself. These things are hard. And I mean, many people, like I figured it out. So, I mean, some of it, not all of it. So everyone else can. It's about practice and perseverance, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for suggesting. This was really good
All right.
topic.
Thank you so much, and thanks for joining. And Exco, Pavel, David, just thanks for chipping in, and Krista, thank you
Absolutely.
so much for all the advice, and James, thank you so much.
Bye.